Greece, Crete, Mykonos, Santorini, 3 islands where civilizations rose, moved, and almost ended. And in the next 10 minutes, you'll find out how. Crete, where Europe began and then forgot it, ever did. You step off the ferry and the island refuses to be small. Mountains run its whole length, snow on the peaks into spring, while the coast below is already warm. The air smells of wild thyme and olive trees. Crete doesn't feel like an island, it feels like a country surrounded by sea. 4,000 years ago, this island built the first civilization in Europe. We call them the Minoans. While most of the continent still lived in scattered villages, the Minoans had cities, palaces with running water, workshops, trade fleets, paved roads. They painted frescoes of dolphins and dancers, bright and full of joy. They wrote in a script we still cannot read. And then they were gone, weakened by a volcanic catastrophe, finished by invaders, erased from memory. For 3,000 years afterward, the Minoans survived only in legend. The Greeks told stories of King Minos, of a labyrinth beneath his palace, of a monster at its center. Everyone assumed it was a myth. Then, in 1900, a British archaeologist began digging on a hill near Heraklion and uncovered Knossos. A palace so vast, so full of winding corridors, that the legend suddenly made sense. The labyrinth wasn't invented, it was remembered. Glad you're still here. Subscribe to GoBeyondia. And the Greeks believed something else about Crete, that it was where their gods began. High in the mountains in a cave on Mount Ida, they said the god, Zeus, himself was born, hidden as an infant from a father who meant to devour him. Think about that. To the ancient Greeks, Crete wasn't just an island, it was the birthplace of the king of the gods, the place their whole world began. For more than 4 centuries, Crete belonged to Venice. The harbors of Chania and Rethymno still wear it. Pastel houses, arched stone, a Venetian lighthouse standing over the water. And when the Ottomans came for the island, the city of Candia held out for 21 years, one of the longest sieges in history, fought for a single island. Crete is still its own world. In the mountain villages, people live longer than almost anyone in Europe, and decades ago, scientists came to find out why. The answer was the Cretan table: olive oil, wild greens, herbs, almost nothing wasted. The world studied it and called it the Mediterranean diet. But on Crete, it was never a diet. It was just lunch. Most places measure their history in centuries. Crete measures it in beginnings. The first European civilization, the birthplace of a god, a myth that turned out to be a memory. Crete isn't just old. Crete is where old begins. Every island we sail to after this one is, in some way, Crete's child. Next, we leave the island where Europe began and sail to a much smaller one with a secret Crete never kept. We'll tell you its name when we arrive. Subscribe to GoBeyondia. Mykonos, the world's most famous party island, next door to a place where no one was allowed to be born or to die. You step off the boat into wind. Mykonos is one of the windiest islands in Greece. The Meltemi pours across the Cyclades all summer long. The town is blinding white, a maze of lanes that twist back on themselves. And on the hill above, the water stand the windmills, the first thing you see and the key to everything this island is. For most of its history, Mykonos was poor. The soil is thin, the rock is bare, and that famous wind made farming almost impossible. So the Myconians did what islanders do. They turned the curse into a tool. They covered the island in windmills and let the relentless wind grind their grain. They became sailors, traders, and, when they had to, pirates. They even built their town as a labyrinth, lanes deliberately twisted to confuse the raiders who came ashore. Mykonos survived on leverage. It had nothing, so it used everything. But the real story of Mykonos sits 2 miles offshore on a tiny, silent island called Delos. To the ancient Greeks, Delos was one of the holiest places on earth, the birthplace of the god Apollo, the sacred heart of the Aegean. And it was so sacred, the Greeks made an extraordinary law. No one was allowed to be born on Delos, and no one was allowed to die there. The island had to stay pure. The pregnant and the dying were carried away by boat. Glad you're still here. Subscribe to GoBeyondia. And this is where Mykonos comes in. Because if you couldn't be born or die on Delos, if you couldn't truly live there at all, you needed somewhere close by to stay. That somewhere was Mykonos. For 2,000 years, Mykonos was the island in the shadow of the sacred one, the waiting room, the stepping stone. People came for Delos and slept on Mykonos. Then, in the 20th century, everything turned over. Delos emptied completely. Today, it's an uninhabited ruin, the most beautiful ghost in the Aegean. And Mykonos, the overlooked neighbor, was discovered first by archaeologists coming to dig at Delos, then by artists, then by the jet set who followed them. The barren little island that nobody wanted became one of the most famous places on Earth. The stepping stone became the destination. Mykonos is proof that history doesn't hand out importance permanently. The sacred island fell silent. The poor neighbor took the spotlight. Walk Mykonos today and the wind is still there, the windmills are still there, the white maze is still there. But the holiness moved next door a long time ago. Mykonos didn't inherit greatness. It outlasted the island that had it. Next, we sail to another Greek island, one with a story you won't see coming. We'll save its name for when we arrive. Subscribe to GoBeyondia. Santorini. You've seen this island 1,000 times. You've never been told what it really is. You climb the steps in Oya, and the whole island opens beneath you. White houses spilling down a cliff. A bay so wide it doesn't look real. The most photographed view in Greece. But that perfect blue bay is a hole. You're standing on the rim of it, and it was blown open. 3,500 years ago, Santorini was a different shape. A round island the Greeks called Strongly. Then the volcano beneath it erupted, one of the largest eruptions in human history. Ash thrown 40 kilometers into the sky. The center of the island collapsed into the sea, and that collapse is the bay you see now. The tsunami struck Crete 100 kilometers south. The same Crete, the same Minoans we began this journey with. This island may be the reason Europe's first civilization fell, and something is buried here. On the south of the island lies Crete, a Bronze Age town sealed under ash for 3,500 years. When archaeologists uncovered it, they found streets, staircases, frescoes still bright on the walls. They found everything except people. No bodies. The Creterians felt the earthquakes that came before the eruption, and they understood. They walked away from their entire world and lived. Glad you're still here. Subscribe to GoBeyondia. Santorini's volcano never died. In the middle of the bay sits a small black island, the volcano's living cone, still warm, still watched. And yet people came back. They built villages along the very edge of the crater. They carved homes into the ash and pumice. They planted vines in the ruined soil, and it gave them a wine that grows nowhere else. On Santorini, people don't just survive beside the volcano. They live off it. The Greeks never forgot what happened here. Some believe this eruption is the true story behind Plato's Atlantis, the island civilization that vanished beneath the sea in a single day. And every evening, thousands gather on the cliffs of Oya to watch the most famous sunset on Earth. Almost none of them know they are watching it set into the mouth of a volcano. Santorini is the most beautiful place many travelers will ever see. And all of it, the bay, the cliffs, the light, the sunset, is the shape of a catastrophe. The island is breathtaking because it was broken. Every photograph of Santorini is a photograph of something no longer there. We come to the edge of the wound and call it the most romantic view in the world. That's the Greek islands, Crete, where Europe began, Mykonos, where the spotlight moved, and Santorini, where the most beautiful view on Earth is also its deepest scar. If you've stayed with us this far, you're family now. Subscribe to GoBeyondia.